right at this COP, the fight that we are seeing in developing countries, it's again the point of contention. Where do you define that baseline? Because obviously, developing countries would demand their fair share of justice because we want to be developed, right? That's their fair point, and that's absolutely fair. Because the reason they are not a developed nation because they were being exploited at that time. Like look at history. History is a stark reminder of what we have done to this planet, right? And what we have done to other countries as well. So I just wanted to understand, like, from your observations here, what has been the stance of like how aggressively are developing an LDCs? Like I know for a fact that LDCs are really, like, you have attended sessions by the president of Maldives and all, and they have been on this. They have been pushing for it. We need the repatriation. We need it. But as a whole, at COP, what has been the main point of, like, fight between developing LDCs and developed?
Right, right. So, this larger fight will always go on because there is that discrepancy and inequity. Let me say, what does this fight boil down to? Right. This fight boils down to climate finance. This fight boils down to loss and damage and adaptation. Right. In that term, developing countries have very clearly said that, listen, and this was something that developed countries also agreed to within the Paris Agreement, that we will produce 100 billion a year for climate finance, which means money for mitigation in terms of reducing emissions, money for adaptation in terms of preparing yourself for climate impacts, and also money to recover from the damage caused by those climate impacts. Now, what has happened is that you've managed to get 30 billion in 4-5 years, or maybe 1 year. This time you have 30 billion. Previous years, nothing happened. COVID economy came, nobody gave money, but they had money for themselves, the developed countries. So now the fight between developing and developed countries is primarily one of the key pointers is finance, because unless you have money on the table, you can't really talk. You can't really expect developing countries or LDCs or SIDS to start changing their economic structures unless they have the incentive and the required support to do that. And that support is not something which will be given, as a grant. It is something which is well deserved. We have reached here in terms of the climate crisis because the carbon space and the carbon budget was exploited, as you rightly said. So right now the issue is between countries, climate finance. Now India has upped that ambition by saying that we need $1 trillion to meet that. Now, we are not saying that 100 billion earlier is the ceiling or the floor. We are going beyond that, but earlier the developed countries have really pinned the world to a 100 billion figure, which never came. So climate finance is a reflection or a boiling point of that fight. The other point, of that fight are more technical negotiation parts as to the clean development mechanism and the trading of carbon credits. Will you be allowing carbon credits to be exchanged? What is the additionality element of it? How transferable and transparent will they be? Under the current facility of the UN, the GCF and others, some 1.3 billion carbon credits are standing unsold. Right, and if you do not buy them right now, then the whole mechanism will lose legitimacy. So how do you make sure there is finance for everybody, including different actors? But on that point, I would say that it is not as much as climate change discussions are about the economics and working it through your national level GDPs and other things. We need to realize that we do not have that much time. Right, if developing countries today start taking super hard locked positions, right, then what kind of space are we leaving for SIDS and LDCs who have not even achieved or aspire or have reached the level of development that developing countries have reached, right? So we need to act quick and fast, which is why you need champions again within countries, within diplomacy, within different diplomatic corps who are pushing and getting everybody aligned. And this is where the role of the UN and the multilateral institutions is key to bring people together, to bring states together, because what we decide right now is only a decision, but it will be majorly followed up at the national level by state governments, by subnational governments, which is where youth and community organizers are also important, and they come in there more importantly.
That's again a brilliant answer, and thank you for distilling so much. I mean, and that also kind of like the whole point about how you told me, like, quick, we need to act now, and the deadlock that you and the deadlock that is coming. I think now that answers my question to, like, your question to me as well. Why people outside the arena are angry? Because that deadlock isn't their fault. That deadlock is anyone else's fault. That deadlock is just. I mean, you can say it's not even fault. It's just how these things has been going, and that is what is making people angry.
Right.